Hello, my friends. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the autosomal DNA results, predicted phenotype G25, and even Eurogene's K36 results of an Iranian Neolithic farmer from a Vezmeh cave in western Iran. So this individual is male. His mitochondrial lineage is J1D, which is a very typical mitochondrial lineage for Middle Eastern people. And his Y DNA, his paternal lineage, is actually J2B2, which is very, very interesting. Let's see, what is the Y DNA that my trait predictor gives for him? It gives for him J2B. So I guess, yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty accurate, pretty spot on. Now, the time period that this individual lived in, the time period is 74 centuries before the Common Era, so 94 centuries before present, a very long time ago. And the location where the sample is from is right here. This is the location where the sample is from Western Iran. Now, I will remind you, this sample is an Iranian Neolithic farmer, so it's essentially a mixture of Dzudzuana with ancient North Eurasians with some other stuff. And in terms of deeper Paleolithic admixtures, we're actually going to get into that right now. So I made a G25 model for this sample, and G25 is really not the best for modeling Mesolithic genomes using samples from the Upper Paleolithic. It's really not the best for this type of modeling, but you can still make a pretty good model with G25, even for this type of request, right? So with G25, this is what this individual scores. He's scoring mostly Dzudzuana, a little bit of Levant pre-pottery Neolithic, so a little bit of Levant or Natufian-like admixture as well. Then there is 19% of Fontavageratri, so 19% of ancient North Eurasian-like admixture, 15% Onge, which would be like ancestral South Indian. So there is some South Asian or ancestral South Indian would actually be like extreme South Asian, not even South Asian, but more like extreme South Asian admixture. And then there is 2.8% Butsi, which is kind of like sub-Saharan African admixture, which is present in a lot of these ancient populations, because once again they lack the modern Eurasian drift, and because they lack the modern Eurasian drift, they score a little bit of African with these calculators. And I think we will see a little bit of African with Eurogene's K36 as well, if I remember right. Yes, we do see a little bit of African as well. With Eurogene's K36, we see 2.77% West African and 1.8% Pygmy, on top of the 0.92% Omotic. So if you add those together, I think with Eurogene's K36, this individual is scoring, this looks like 5% Sub-Saharan African in total. Not that much, but it is quite high. And there is nobody in this region of the world today who will score like this, who will score 5% African. So it's not because of any genuine Sub-Saharan African admixture. It is simply because this is an ancient sample, and it does not have a lot of the modern West Eurasian genetic drift. That is simply the reason that it is scoring so much Sub-Saharan African with this calculator. Now, what is very interesting, what is very, very fascinating to me is that it's scoring 64% South Central Asian, and it is not scoring any North Caucasian. I noticed with other Iranian Neolithic farmers and Caucasian hunter-gatherers that they score a lot of South Central Asian and also a lot of North Caucasian. But with this sample is not scoring any North Caucasian whatsoever. All of the West Asian components that they score is South Central Asian, Armenian, and West Caucasus. And that is it. They are not scoring any North Caucasus whatsoever. They are scoring a little bit of East Mediterranean, 15.5% East Mediterranean, and they are scoring a little bit of Near Eastern as well. And because of that, I think this is the reason they are scoring Druzia with the oracle. The oracle is modeling them as a mixture of Brahvi plus Druzia, or Baloch plus Druzia. But the closest groups to them are Brahwi, Patan, Burusho, Baloch, Kalash, Sindhi, Tajik, Makrani, Turkmen, Yagnobi. So the closest groups to them are, of course, populations of Pakistan, south. What is it? It is the southwest of Pakistan, essentially. So the closest groups to them are Brahwi and Baloch. That is, they are always the closest groups to any Iranian Neolithic farmers that you analyze. Any Iranian Neolithic farmer sample that you look at will be always closest to Brahvi and Baloch. Let's look at what this individual scores with Eurogene's K13, actually. That might be quite interesting to see. I'm going to stop sharing and wait for this to finish. And this is what he scores with Eurogene's K13. Here we see something completely different. This is actually very, very different from what we saw with Eurogene's K36, because when you look at Eurogene's K36, you might get the impression that this individual has like um, Western Mediterranean kind of admixture. It's really not the case, because here you see they're scoring 63% West Asian and then 22% South Asian. So it's more of a South Asian kind of shift relative to like Caucasian hunter-gatherers who score 85, 90% West Asian on this calculator. So relative to Caucasus hunter-gatherers, this individual actually has more of a South Asian kind of shift, like towards India and Pakistan and Bangladesh, those kinds of directions. And once again, we do see the 5% sub-Saharan African and the 0.5% Northeast African. I already told you where that is coming from. That is simply because it's an ancient individual, and it's lacking a lot of the modern Eurasian drift. So because of that, because it's an ancient individual, it's going to score a little bit of sub-Saharan African, as always. As the further back in time you go in Eurasia, the more sub-Saharan African they score on these calculators. And if you go really far back, if you go to the time of Neanderthals, they score 100% sub-Saharan African with these calculators. And this individual with the oracle is getting modeled as a mixture of Brahvi plus Abkhazian, Brahvi plus Abkhazian, Brahvi plus Georgian, Brahvi Baloch plus Abkhazian, Baloch plus Georgian. So basically a mixture of Brahvi or Baloch plus North Caucasian. So that's very much what I would expect for a Iranian Neolithic farmer to score. Now let's go ahead and explore what this individual scores with my trait predictor. We're going to start with Nashakot, with phenotype. So it looks like for phenotype, this individual has a brown eye color. 63% likelihood of brown eyes. There is also a very significant likelihood of dark brown eyes for him, but very, very, very low likelihood of hazel eyes or green eyes or blue eyes. So that's completely out of the picture. He definitely does not have any type of light eye color. For hair color, once again, very definite prediction for black hair. Very low likelihood for any hair color that is lighter than black. And for skin color, very, very definite prediction for light brown skin. There is 2% likelihood for olive skin, but that's very insignificant. So most likely this individual has light brown skin, black hair, and brown eyes. So that's most likely the coloring of this individual. For hair texture, it looks like he has wavy hair. There's also a pretty significant likelihood for straight hair and curly hair, but we can say with a significant degree of certainty that he does not have kinky hair. And for nose shape, he most likely has a Greek nose shape. Okay, that's pretty cool. For coloring related variants found in the file, so he's heterozygous here, which means with snipper-free, he would probably be predicted to have hazel or brown eyes, but he does not have blue haplotype 3, and he's heterozygous for blue haplotype 2, which is very, very interesting. So being heterozygous for blue haplotype 2 without having any Western hunter-gatherer ancestry, once again, this further proves the idea that I've been putting forth a couple months back, that this mutation for blue eyes and this variation for blue eyes and blue eye haplotype 2, it is much older than 10,000 years ago, and it did not occur in Western hunter-gatherers. It must have occurred in some population that's ancestral to Western hunter-gatherers. That's also ancestral to pretty much all West Eurasians, because all West Eurasians have at very low frequencies, you find this mutation in all West Eurasian populations. You find this mutation in North Africans. You find this mutation in Native Americans. It is not something that is exclusive to Western hunter-gatherers, and you see this. You see proof of this right now, right here in this sample. This sample has no Western hunter-gatherer admixture, yet he is heterozygous for this variation right here, for blue eye haplotype 2. He's also heterozygous for blue eye haplotype 1. And he's heterozygous for this variation in SLC 24A5. So that's kind of exotic. That's kind of an exotic genotype for European or Eurasian in general. Kind of darker skin tone based on that. He does not have any light color variants in these two variations of SLC 45A2. So he's quite darker. He's darker than most even most Iranians today, because that's kind of a darker on the darker side compared to most Iranians even. He does have two light color variants in these two variations of Ketal G, so that's kind of typical for Eurasians in general. Lighter pigmentation of skin, and he does not have any predisposition to ginger hair. No light color variants in MC1R. Okay, let's close this and let's see the phenotype oracle. I've already seen the phenotype oracle, so I already know what he looks like, but I'm gonna show this to you right now. I'm getting some lag right now. Hold on. Okay, so the closest phenotypes to him is this, which is makes sense when you consider the populations he's closest to. He's closest to what, like Baloch, Brahwi, right? So that looks like Baloch and Brahwi. That definitely looks Baloch and Brahwi to me. The second closest phenotype to him is this, also looks very Baloch and Brahwi. And the third closest phenotype is this, also looks very much Baloch and Brahwi for sure. But also keep in mind that in the Mesolithic, these people look different from how they look today. They have evolved over time to look a little bit different. But also consider that he has brown eyes, light brown skin, and black hair. All three of these closest phenotypes right here fit that description. Maybe not this one on the bottom, because the bottom has sort of a medium brown skin, I would say, and dark brown eyes instead. But the two on top do fit that description, which does make sense because they have a closer distance. Okay, and for the two-way mixture phenotypes, that's interesting. Right, for the two-way mixture phenotypes, the closest mixture is a mixture of 50% this, 50% this Tajik, I guess, plus 50% South Indian. So there is a South Indian type of admixture in his phenotype oracle that this picks up on. The second closest mixture is a mixture of 50% this plus 50% once again South Indian. The third closest mixture is 50% this plus 50% once again South Indian. So it looks like a mixture of Eastern Mediterranean plus South Indian, or even a mixture of Pamiriid plus Australian at the very end here. Seems to be the closest phenotype mixture to what this individual looked like. And when you mix those two together, you get something that looks like this. You get something that looks like either this or this or this, something that looks vaguely Indian. So this individual is quite South Asian looking overall. As you can see, Phenotype Oracle shows that this individual looks rather South Asian than like Caucasian or Georgian or something. All right, let's close this. Let's go ahead and see what he scores for the biomarkers panel. And it looks like he's got a predisposition to higher level of vitamin D. Really good stuff. Higher level of LDL cholesterol, which is kind of bad, and lower level of HDL cholesterol, which is also kind of bad. But it's okay. It's not too. It doesn't deviate from the average too much. Lower level of glucose levels, which is good. Higher hemoglobin, which is good. Lower blood pressure, which is really good. So he's got some predisposition to lower blood pressure, which is really good to see. Lower level of iron in the blood, so he does not have a predisposition to hemochromatosis, which is really good to see. He has lower predisposition to sex hormone binding globulin in blood, which is really good to see. He has lower red blood cell count in blood and higher number of base pairs for telomere length, which is really good. So he has a predisposition to live longer. Really good. And pretty much average for height. Average in terms of height. I don't know what is the meta on the height of Iranian Neolithic farmers. Were they tall? Were they short? I don't know what the meta is. You enlighten me in the comments. Let's go ahead and see what he scores for the polygenic risk scores. I am going to ignore everything that is average and only talk about stuff that is significant. So it looks like he has a below average odds for kidney stones. He has a below average odds for hemoglobin E disease. Looks like he has a high score for migraine. Looks like he has a below average score for gout. Wow, that's interesting. So he's scoring below average for hemoglobin E disease even though he has a risk variant. That's kind of interesting. That's really interesting. Really cool. Okay, he has a below average odds for gout. He has a above average odds for thyroid cancer. He has a below average odds for eczema. He has a very high odds for age-related macular degeneration. We can look that up in the file. Let's look that up in the file. Let's explore that right now. So it looks like he has a genotype for reduced odds of that, but then he has the genotypes for increased odds of that, and a lot of genotypes for increased odds of that, actually. So yes, that makes sense. A lot of genotypes for increased odds of AMD. He has a genotype for increased. He has a phenotype. I don't know how to word this correctly because it's a polygenic kind of a prediction. So his prediction is that he has a much higher than average odds for rheumatoid arthritis. Let's look that up as well. Let's look that up as well. So 5.2 times the risk of rheumatoid arthritis, 2.3 times risk of rheumatoid arthritis. Okay, so this makes sense. There's two genotypes that both increase the risk of rheumatoid arthritis. He has a genotype for lower risk of rheumatoid arthritis, and he has a genotype for another genotype for lower risk of rheumatoid arthritis, but this does not affect score. All right, so he essentially has just these two genotypes that lead to significantly increased risk of rheumatoid arthritis. Makes sense. Makes sense he would score the way he does. He's got below averages for Tourette's, really good. He's got above averages for epilepsy. He's got very high odds for leukemia. Wow. I don't think I've seen high. I don't think I've seen score for leukemia that is this high before. So he's definitely got very high predisposition to leukemia. Let's look that up actually. Leukemia. Okay, so he's got one NQ01 allele, significantly higher odds of leukemia. He's got all these genotypes that predispose him to leukemia. That's very interesting. So leukemia is something he definitely has to watch out for. And I don't think I've ever seen anybody score this high for the risk of leukemia before. That's very interesting. He's got high score for myopia. He's got below average odds for corneal astigmatism. He's got below average odds for stroke, which is really good to see. He's got very high odds for male pattern hair loss. Male pattern hair loss and balding in general is a very West Eurasian trait. Also, this is a very high score. 3.14 is higher than it might be one of the highest scores I've seen thus far. So, he's definitely predisposed to losing hair at an early age, and it does fit the stereotype of West Eurasian or European or Iranian or Jewish people who go bald very early. Definitely fits that stereotype. Okay, he has below average odds for atrial fibrillation. He has below average odds for deep vein thrombosis. He has below average odds for ADHD. He has below average odds for unipolar depression. He has average odds for bipolar type 1. He has average odds for schizophrenia. And he has above average odds for type 2 diabetes, but below average odds for type 1 diabetes. And he has below averages for Alzheimer's and below averages for multiple sclerosis. So it looks like so far the one thing that I'm really kind of concerned about is the leukemia score. For cancer section, he's got 6 risk variants for breast cancer out of 24, which is kind of typical. 15 out of 24 for testicular cancer. And he's got 2 risk variants and all the important variations in KIT-G. So he's quite cooked when it comes to testicular cancer risk variants. But keep in mind that testicular cancer is a very modern condition. Cancer in general is a very modern condition. Like people in the past, you don't really hear about people dying from cancer even in the Middle Ages. It seems to be a very modern environmental, this modern environmental impact that humans have created on the atmosphere and the carbon emissions. All that contributed to us getting cancers and stuff like that. So I feel like in the Mesolithic, this individual doesn't really have to worry about testicular cancer too much. For celiac disease section, he's got 3 risk variants for celiac disease out of 12. Pretty good. Let's see what else. For GSS, no risk variants. For Crohn's disease, he's got 9 risk variants out of 29, out of 28. That's really high. That's actually really, really high. But none of them are marked as important, so that's okay. That's typical. No risk variants for Riefenstein's, 1 for Parkinson's. That's really interesting. Okay, I haven't seen that in a long time. I haven't seen risk variants for Parkinson's in a long time. So this is really uncommon to score this, and it might be a miscall because it's heterozygous. So whenever you see really uncommon genotypes like this and it's heterozygous, it's probably a miscall, most likely. But I don't know for sure. Gilbert syndrome section, he's got common risk variant here. Basal cell carcinoma, no risk variants. Porphyria, he's got heterozygous genotype here as well. But once again, I feel like it's most likely a miscall. This is my opinion. In my opinion, when you see these uncommon risk variants, and they are heterozygous, it's usually a miscall. Peutz-Jeghers, no risk variants. Yeah, hypoplasia, once again, you see, I think it's a miscall. All these are miscalls, I think. Jacob Creutzfeldt, yeah, okay. No risk variants, no risk variants. Yeah, once again, I think another miscall for that. All right, another miscall for this. But overall, it's pretty healthy individual. The only things that concern me is the genotype for is the risk score for leukemia. That's quite scary to look at. All right, now let's go ahead and go through the monogenic traits and see what this individual scores. So it looks like for warrior versus warrior panel, this individual is actually scoring warrior phenotype. So slower dopamine reuptake and higher dopamine levels, lower stress resiliency. This is a very European kind of a phenotype to score. So I was a little bit surprised by that, by the fact that this is a Iranian Neolithic farmer and he is scoring this extremely European phenotype. But I guess he's a West Eurasian, and West Eurasians, there must be some affinity between all West Eurasians together. So maybe it is typical even for Iranian Neolithic farmers to score this way. But he is also scoring warrior phenotype with my trait predictor. So he's got slower dopamine reuptake and higher dopamine levels, lower stress resiliency. For DRD2 gene panel, he's scoring intermediate number of dopamine D2 receptor sites in the brain, so intermediate predisposition to such conditions as schizophrenia and bipolar. For levels of 5-HT and serotonin, he is scoring intermediate or lower levels of 5-HT and serotonin, so some slight predisposition to such conditions as anxiety and depression. For FGFR3 gene panel, he is definitely not a dwarf. He doesn't have any of the dwarfism variants, so he's not predisposed to being a dwarf. What is the politically correct term? I don't know. I forgot. Okay. He doesn't have any risk variants for sleep disorders here. For insomnia and sleep disorders panel, pretty good to see. Okay. And for autism panel, it looks like he has a predisposition to higher or intermediate odds of autism based on his genotypes here. It's not just these genotypes, it's also genotypes. It's also every genotype that's implicated in autism that I could find on SNpedia. So it's like it's a lot more than just these 6. It's like there's like 20 that go into this panel. For lactose persistence, he is scoring actually lower or intermediate odds of lactose intolerance. So he's actually predisposed to being lactose persistent, which is very, very interesting. And that is because he has this genotype, which leads to being lactose persistent, and he also carries a lactose persistence variant in the main variation of MCM6, which is really, really surprising, because how did he get it? How did he, an Iranian Neolithic farmer, get the variant for European lactose persistence in MCM6? Like, it's really surprising. How does he? I mean, it's really interesting. Maybe write your thoughts in the comments. How do you think that's possible? Because it is not a miscall. In this type of area, you do not get miscalls. You would see this a lot more frequently if it was a miscall. So write your thoughts in the comments how you think this individual has the European lactose persistence variant in MCM6, because he does somehow. Somehow he does. And he is predicted because of it to be lactose tolerant, lactose persistent with my tool. For OXTR and empathy gene, it looks like he is scoring a lower or average level of empathy based on these Based on these 6 SNPs. So if you take these 6 SNPs into account, he's scoring lower or average level of empathy. For diabetes, all these taken into account, I think he was scoring high for type 2 and low for type 1. Let's see that again. Actually, we can check that again. Yeah, high for type 2, low for type 1. Okay. For hemochromatosis, he does not carry any risk variants for hemochromatosis. We already know that because we looked at the biomarkers panel. And for Alzheimer's, no risk variants for Alzheimer's and APOE, really good to see. Multiple sclerosis, no risk variants for multiple sclerosis in the HLA gene, really good to see. For cardiovascular disease panel, so all this is really a lot to summarize. So really, we're going to just look at the panel, and based on the panel, he has a intermediate predisposition to intermediate odds of cardiovascular issues, which is really good. So he doesn't really have any predisposition to cardiovascular issues. Okay, for vitiligo panel, he does have heterozygous gene type in these 2 variations for the HLA gene, but I feel like for the HLA gene panel, we're going to see good results. We're going to see good, healthy results for the HLA gene panel, because no risk variants in the HLA for multiple sclerosis. And actually, let's scroll up a little bit for diabetes. Yeah, AA here, type 1 diabetes, very unlikely. So we're going to see good results for the HLA gene panel because of that. We're going to see good results. For the facial morphology panel, he does not have any East Eurasian genotypes in the EDAR. His genotype in EDAR is very European, so West Eurasian facial morphology doesn't really mean European. It can also mean South Asian. It can also mean North African. It can also mean Middle Eastern. It just means not East Asian. It just means sort of West Eurasian facial morphology, essentially. And as you've seen with the facial morphology oracle, it seems to think he's a South Asian. It seems to predict him to be a South Asian. So because of these genotypes, the closest match to him ethnically, the closest match to him morphologically is a South Asian phenotype. He has a longer mid-face length. He has intermediate odds of protruding nasal bridge. He has intermediate nose size. He has nose pointing up. He has lower odds of missing teeth, and he has a genotype for slightly thinner eyebrows and another genotype for slightly thicker eyebrows. Really cool. All right. He does not have micropenis. Neither of the two variations for micropenis. He doesn't have any genotypes for micropenis. Really good to see. He's got mix of muscle types, slightly more sprinter rather than endurance athlete. Really good to see. He's not an Asian flusher. He's got lower odds of alcoholism. Really good to see. Okay. For SCN9A gene panel, he actually has one variant for increased pain sensitivity in SCN9A, which is very, very interesting because it is also very much linked to ethnicity. This variation has to do with pain sensitivity, and it's very ethnically linked, because I remember specifically when I was looking at it, I was surprised how come it is South Asians who have the highest frequency of the variant that has to do with increased pain sensitivity. So this is a very South Asian genetic trait to have, and he does have it, which is kind of interesting. He's got lower odds of cannabis-induced psychosis. That's very interesting. It just catches my eye and I talk about it. He does not carry any of the albinism mutations. He does have a genotype for increased risk of cleft lip, and he is not a carrier of Melanesian blonde hair variants. He does not have any variants for familial Mediterranean fever. For MTHFR panel, he does not have any risk variants in MTHFR. So it looks like for the homocysteine panel, we're probably going to see good results. Homocysteine panel is probably going to look very good. For alcoholism panel, he's scoring above average for the odds of alcoholism, but it's slightly above average, not too bad. Okay, for rare diseases and traits panel, let's see for that. He's got one risk variant for endometriosis. Okay. Let's see, what other rare diseases does he have a predisposition to? He has a genotype for higher risk of glaucoma. He has a genotype for high risk of rheumatoid arthritis, but I think we talked about this already. And that's it. No, he has a genotype for high risk of esophilic esophagitis, but that's it. He doesn't have any risk variants for anything else. Really good. So he's quite healthy. He doesn't have any risk variants for any rare conditions. For celiac disease panel, looks like he has one risk variant for celiac disease in the HLA gene, but that is pretty much it. And this will show up on the HLA gene panel as well. Okay, for the androgen receptor gene panel, he has no androgen sensitivity, no Riefenstein syndrome, and typical or higher odds of baldness. Okay, and now for the HLA gene panel, this is what we see here. For the HLA gene panel, we see that he has lower odds of autoimmune disease. Essentially, that is what I was saying. Despite him having risk variants in the HLA variations that have to do with vitiligo, despite that, he still is scoring very good. He's still scoring lower odds of autoimmune disease. So that's pretty good. And for the MTRR gene panel, he has 4 risk variants here, but that's 4 out of how many? That's 4 out of 12. So that's pretty good. That's a ratio of 1 out of 3. 1 out of 3 risk variants ratio is kind of good for MTRR gene panel. Typical stuff. For CBS panel, he's scoring lower or intermediate levels of homocysteine. So that's really good. So the MTHFR gene panel definitely contributed big time to this because he doesn't have any risk variants there. And also, the highest impact SNP in the CBS panel here leads to lower homocysteine levels. So really, it makes sense that he's scoring lower levels of homocysteine for the homocystinuria panel. And he also doesn't have any risk variants for homocystinuria as well. So because of that, because of these factors, he is scoring lower levels of homocysteine for the homocystinuria panel. For muscular dystrophy myopathy, he's got no risk variance for that. And he's scoring 3 risk variance for adrenoleukodystrophy. That is impossible. If you are a male, you cannot have an odd number of risk variance for adrenoleukodystrophy. That is impossible, because you cannot have heterozygous genotype on your X chromosome if you are a male. So this is because this is a miscall. This is due to miscalls. That is how you know you have faulty data, and that is very unfortunate that I'm dealing with faulty data like that. So yeah, that's all I can say. And in Russian we have a saying, "Доверяй да проверяй," trust but verify, and that's what I have to do. I have to be very careful when I announce these results, especially for rare conditions, these rare variations, rare variants, where it's like 0 point something percent likelihood to carry this condition. I have to be very careful when I announce that this sample has this condition, because trust but verify, it's usually a miscall. Most of the times it's a miscall. So in this case, I think it's a miscall as well, because you cannot have heterozygous genotype if you're a male on your X chromosome. For color blindness panel, he does not carry any risk variance for that. Really good to see. And for FTO gene panel, he's got lower odds of obesity. So predisposition to lower or intermediate odds of obesity, really good, based on these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Based on these 11 S&Ps, he's got predisposition to lower odds of obesity. And for the biotraits panel, actually I skipped over the syncope panel. Based on 7 S&Ps for the syncope panel, he's got pretty much spot on averages for syncope. And for the biotraits panel, let's talk about this a little bit. He's got 1 copy of the hunter-gatherer and 1 copy of the farmer variant, which leads to intermediate ability to process carbs and sugars. He is a farmer, so for him, I think the farmer variant would be a little bit more beneficial to be able to process these carbohydrate-rich diets, but it's okay. And let's go over the blood type panel. He definitely has blood type O. The most common blood type for humans worldwide is blood type O, and that is the blood type that he has. So that is the prediction for him to have blood type O. Well, thank you for watching my video until the very end. Make sure you check out the description of the video, where you will be able to download the raw DNA file for this individual, for this sample. Make sure you also check out the description for the download for my trait predictor, which will allow you to generate reports such as this. There is so much in this report that I don't talk about, right? I mean, I can't talk about all of this and fit it all in a 30-minute video, because it would not be very entertaining for you guys to watch. But if you want to explore your genome and dive deeper into your health and traits, this is the tool to get. And also, it allows you to generate a report that you can send. It's a very lightweight report. It only weighs around 160 kilobytes. You can send it to somebody over Discord, over Messenger, over email. It's like an attachment. You can open it on your computer, on your phone, whatever. And it comes in the form of a web page that you can open. So it's very, very. I think it's a very, very interesting idea, the way I came up with this. The way it works. And there is a Linux version of my trait predictor executable. There is a Windows version. If you have a Linux or a Windows system, you can definitely use my trait predictor. It only costs $25 currently. I might even make it cheaper, because people aren't too interested in buying. So I might even make it cheaper at some point in the future. But currently it's $25. Make sure you check that out. And also, in case you don't want to buy the executable, in case you aren't really too interested in generating these reports for yourself, you can buy a single report from me, where you send me your DNA file and I send you back the report that looks something like this, something like what I've shown you in this video, and that will cost you $4. So linked to that is also going to be in the description of the video. Thanks for watching. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe in case you liked the video. Goodbye.